Make believe. What does that mean? What does it mean to you? Not what it means to anybody else. If we can't defy our own minds, how can we defy our own levels of our own imagination? Now, to use your imagination is making believe that you are in customizations and settings and you're processing this and directing this and you want to modify this, you want to angle this, you want to put this together, you want to put that together. Am I creating or did I already create it? Am I visioning or did I already vision it? So what we have to start to identify is how we see it through our mind imagination, that is process of everything live, just creating. And that's what we have to come in positions of, to modify the physical body in its own codification, always in zero, every time it has a conversation with its seconds, minutes, and hours. So it doesn't get confused when it puts the body in the physical body in attraction. So the DOS knows exactly that it's always just itself. So that's what I want you guys to modify through, okay, in that position, is to draw things out live. It's much easier to identify that through improv. Improv is basically making things up as you go. But you're not really making things up. You're actually living in the VR system, how everything operates in real time, which is the mind imagination that processes the physical body that sees an operation itself that gets in position, location, and settings. So that's what it is, make believe. Okay? So it's ongoing creating. It's not processing what you're seeing. It's not processing what you're doing. There's no muscle memory in that position. There's no lines of memory in that position operation itself. It's just doing things live. Taking that piece of paper and just draw. Not define what I'm drawing, not define what I'm doing. You have to get out of the foundations and set tractions of general and zero. You've got to come in your own system. And the only way to do that is to make believe and bring things to life. That's the only way you guys are going to come into exactly where we have always been living, is the existing of all platforms all at once, seeing all timelines all at once. Do you understand how powerful it is for the physical body to see that in seconds, minutes, and hours? That's always constantly creating and make believing and bringing things to life. Those are the lives we live, but we're always living. It's how we speak. It's how the mind speaks through the body, and how the body reacts or responds to the system that processes everything outside projection. Okay? So you have to get a real good understanding here, the suppositions. Okay? It's like you're caught in a web, or you're trying to figure out this, or you're trying to figure out that, trying to understand this question, trying to understand that question, right? That's ego. There's nothing to question. All you're bringing in is the opposite of everything that modifies everything of the positive. And that's why you're very confused, because you don't have your physical body in balance with its flux capacitor, time capacitor, or its position operation itself. It has to get in position and understand what it's identifying. It's nothing that masses everything, that always is what it always is. That how its mind speaks its volume, and how it speaks to the body that speaks through time. Okay? All right, setting lines of travel, cross line calculations, green lines, okay? So that's position, location, system, interactions, and set calculation. How the mind speaks to the physical body. Okay? How the mind speaks to the physical body. How the brain speaks through upgrading. And how the body identifies itself of operation. So what you guys have to modify through is nothing. There's nothing for you to do. So now you're just coming into understanding how I want you guys to get a piece of paper and draw it out live, without even thinking of what to say, without even thinking of what to do, or without even thinking of what to get in position of. Stop thinking, stop analyzing, stop trying to figure things out. Just let it flow. Just let it go. Let the energy go. Okay? So as soon as you ask yourself, you're making mistakes, because you're not allowing yourself to just be yourself. This is what you have to process your set position. This is the best way you come in that position, because this is going to how you get into lines of set position, how you see yourself in 60% of space that you are not prepared for. Because your physical body doesn't understand the capacity of its own setting, of its own system, which processes everything that engages for in that position of its percentage of its brain. See? You guys actually believe that you were 10% of the brain. You actually believe that's just 5% of space and 5% of time. Setting core centers, percentage over time frame, Fibonacci line operation, setting and travel, yin and yang. Okay? There's a lot of confusion and corruption there, don't you think? Doesn't make any sense. Okay? It's the opposite of everything. That doesn't process any line connection, setting, process, communication, conversion. So travel point lines a graph, sets the communication setting. So we have to monetize and moderate and calculate our own settings and how we see our own division. How we see our own division. How we see our own adding. How we see our own multiplication. How we see our own subtraction. In set position. Okay? Because if you can't modify this, you're just like everybody else. Which means you're just stagnatic and not understanding how to use your mind imagination and constantly just keep creating. Creating is an ongoing existing to its platform of its system. So how I see division is triangulation of 4 and triangulation position is setting, teleportation vessel. That's how I see division. But division allocates time centers in north, south, east, and west. 4 windows of frame and set traction and direction. So time center line position, bringing a computer operations center in a planet, directing lines of Jupiter. Jupiter line core centers, times calculation, modification, high centers of travel. But I constantly keep creating. Time centers, space, set position of travel. So in that position, I'm never at the same frequency, but I'm constantly creating. Making believe, bringing things to life, operation system, operation travel. So I constantly keep creating. So it just keeps going and going and going and going and going faster and faster and faster and faster. It never stops running. It never stops circulating. It never stops rotating. Okay? So don't ever think in that position that you're processing this, that you're processing that, because you're not. But you have to come into the mind of your own imagination. And for you to identify that and to understand that is to be understood. How you speak through the mind of volume to the physical body, so it knows exactly what is adjusting and aligning itself to a program. So I'm trying to get you guys to understand this, and I'm talking at a slower capacity of operation. Because I talk too fast, right? When I talk too fast, I'm modifying things too quick to position your system that your physical body has to adapt to, so it can understand how to process its own system and travel. So you know exactly in that position locations, in that settings, if you've already done this already. Right? So you don't need to modify this. It's just coming into how you put yourself in position. Is knowing how to identify yourself. You're always in the presence of everything. And that puts the physical body a balance of everything in that position. Because the physical body doesn't need to balance itself. It just has to balance what it isn't as a program that it puts itself into. If the dots is always itself, it doesn't need to monitor its own system because it knows exactly what it's doing. It constantly keeps creating new things, new travels, new directions, new locations, new letters, new numbers, new shapes, new symbols, right? Processing thinking is not thinking. Processing thinking is overanalyze of thinking. So there's nothing to think, you've already thought about it. There's nothing in action if it's already done through its equation. There's nothing to do through motion because you already got through it. So how you basically mind speak your system, it speaks through volume. And volume is everything through vast. The vast is everything through velocity that puts you in position, your system and traction. So that's where it comes into settings, when you guys come in your 60 settings. Set position percentage of time. The more you believe in something, it's how you believe in it. Believing is seeing is believing. It doesn't matter what anybody else says because it doesn't matter to you until you identify what you are. And if you identify what you are, you're not processing anything else. You're not in competition with yourself. You're not in competition with anybody else. The only thing you can get in competition is your ego. So your ego doesn't identify you, which you're not identifying yourself. It's how you use the mind, how to use the psychology of its system, the reverse psychology of its system, the meta capacity of its system, the mental capacity of its system, the emotional, and the physical system. It's all in one line operations all at once. That's all going together in a 5-element operation cycle. The high centers of position of the physical body knows exactly what it is. It's nothing but a vessel to travel through. So the DOS knows exactly what it's talking to, not talking at its system. It never talks at its system. It talks through the system itself. It doesn't need to identify itself. It doesn't need to identify this. It doesn't need to identify that. It knows exactly what it is and its purpose, why it's here. But why it's here, it's always here. It's always been existing everywhere. Physical body's never still. Physical body's everywhere all at once, but it's in the mind imagination that you process through. It's how to engage in form and shape, lines, and position. Physical body is always in the physical grounds. Physical body is always in 3D foundations, not in fantasy, not what you depicted in your mind imagination. Now, understanding that in that operation system is improving your system. Act without acting. Talk without talking. See without seeing. Do without doing. Know without knowing. Okay? That's creating. That's not thinking. That's not analyzing anything information setting. That's not even muscle memory of reference of anything in deposition of operations. You've got to come in your own systems. You have to come into your own creations of creating. Because you're modified already, the physical body's already gone through already in programming, but can't allow itself to keep itself in a program, it didn't exist. Because you have it already. You already got it through attraction. You already collected this. This is already collected. You got it in time to the physical body. It's already gone through the time format already to its algorithm. So why do you have to get in position of confusion? That's you adaptation because you don't understand how to go through translation of your egos. Because you know how to modify yourself in balance. Because you think you're out of balance. You want to allow yourself to be confused. You want to allow yourself to separate. Because you can't use your own mind imagination, which is conscious creating. Make believe. Bring things to life. That's all it is. That's all it is. That's the worlds we live in, guys. But the mind itself is always empty. But see, here's the thing. Everything empty itself is processed in how we see the lines of set position, not how we identify everything else. Because that's where we get confused when we turn on the TV. That's where we get confused when we talk to people. That's where we get confused when we talk to our families. That's where you get confused when you talk to your loved ones. That's where your physical body gets very confused in time. So if you don't allow yourself to be yourself, you're not yourself. You're not allowing yourself to be yourself because you don't know how to be yourself in the program. That's being yourself. Is understand how to monitor yourself, how to download and upload a game that you get in position. That's how you get money and manifestation of abundance. But it's all in your mind, imagination. The mind imagination is what we are, not what we live in. We don't live in the imagination. We are the imaginations. And I want to make that very well clear. And the more you come into the mind of control of command, the more you can process your immortalities come in division. How you see your own adding, how you see your own subtracting, how you see your own division locations in set position. Subtract, add, and divide. Now, if I get a 3 centers of 0, and I process line and division line, operation lines at set position location cycle, I direct location and point lines of graph, calculate, modify. What am I talking about? I'm just talking. I'm doing everything live. I'm just broadcasting. So I'm just creating. As I keep creating, I'm evolving. And I'm going faster and faster in time. As I go faster and faster in time, I'm not measuring time. I'm just going faster. And as the brain goes faster, everything goes faster. Everything comes in correlations of balance and no separation of the mind. You can't get confused because you're always in the physical operation of center that processes everything in perception, that processes everything in operation. It's how you talk to yourself and through others. You talk to people through their system. You talk to yourself through your system. Okay? Now, that had the reset lines of travel. So it's a very fast sequence, lines of power, over line operation lines. 3 centers is 2. 3 times 2 lines of settings equals 6,000 line operations. Okay? Physical body's looking at it, doesn't make any sense. It doesn't need to be sense. It identifies its identity of its sense. So it's how the physical body talks to the mind and imagination of itself, because there is no balance of communications until you understand they're always connected to each other. And I have to get you guys in titles and labels and security defense lines, so you can have to let that go. You've got to let that go and just come into the mind imagination so you can process everything just by creating. So in that position lines of settings, in that travel, I want you to modify, take in which hand in that position to put it on a piece of paper. I want you to just keep drawing without thinking of drawing. Okay? That's already knowing what you're already knowing, not knowing what you already know. So it's really interesting stuff too, because there is no muscle memory if you already know it already through the axis that you process through. This helps you to really identify how to really, really master the mind and how to communicate through energy and understand the vibration, frequencies, and harmonics of where it's coming from. Is it coming from your friends? Is it coming from your relation? Is it coming from your loved ones? Is it coming from your family? Where is it coming from? Because that's where the physical body gets very confused at programming. See, when you come to me in that positions, you're putting yourself in position lines of balance, but you're also putting yourself in positions of the confusion of ego. The ego itself doesn't need to identify itself. So the physical body has to get out of the physical operation of itself so it can identify everything of its mind, which is always the emptiness. You're always, always living in an empty glass, guys. I don't know how many times I have to tell you that. Just an empty glass. That's the physical body. Okay? Because there is no separation of the mind. You can't separate the mind and imagination from the physical body, even though the physical body is on the physical grounds. Yes, it's on a physical ground. Yes, in its 3D foundations, not in fantasy. How it sees in fantasy can codify itself. So the more the physical body codifies the encryptions of its binary, the more it understands where it is in its mind imagination, where there is no separation at all. The only thing you separate is an alteration that you're not putting yourself into, is to understand how to see it in a translation or a translution or location that transcending to an ego-aligned operation of itself. That you constantly keep programming and putting yourself in confusion, not allowing yourself to just be you, an empty glass that's always existing, that's always evolving, that's always expanding. And that's all it is, being the nothingness at all times. And that's what we live in spiritual worlds, adaptation. But we have to process itself in the physical body, what it means to our system. Not what it means to anybody else, not what it means to here or there or that position here or that in setting lines of travel. What does it mean to you? How do I master myself? How do I understand myself? How do I modify myself? How do I become the self? Right? Question. All questions come from inside that the physical body already knows. But it's in the mind physical system, not the physical body itself. See, I don't want you guys to get confused for the inner system, the outer system, the outer projections, the line connection to space itself. What you got to modify in that position location is that you're always empty space. Now, how you modify that is how you bring things in, okay? Which is space itself. There you go. There's space coming in. Now, what do you want to do? Now you can bring in programming. Without empty space, you can't bring in atoms because there has to be space there. There has to be levels of space. There's got to be elements of space. There's got to be modifications of space. Space is space itself, not the space that's inside your system. Space is the expanding of yourself, not the expansion of set position. So when you bring in that, then you bring in programming. Okay, that's a program. Does the physical body understand what's going on? Has to know, right? Good. So you got that position locations, bring in another program, and bring in another program, and another program. All right, so it's modifying line position locations of 4 programs that position physical body is going through around seconds, minutes, and hours. And what identifies that, that's it. Goes back to void, back to empty space. Nothing there, back to its setting position operation. Boom, there you go. Okay, you don't go back to anything. You're always in position of 0. We live in the 0 operation of itself. It modifies everything in the future, alters our setting, that process how we see things in perception. But the physical body doesn't need to identify itself. Okay, at all. All it has to recognize is it is adjusting and aligning itself, knowing exactly what it's programming to put itself into, or her. So it's all lines of all communication setting in that process, communication spring, and then triangulation of its direction, and all lines of a simulation inside the game. Okay? Now this completes the system, and the next lines travel to the next simulation game. Booyah, inside a game. First it was an empty space, now it's in a game. Empty space of storage, not empty space. I'm not talking about space flying around, like an astronaut going from here and there. I'm talking about the empty space of storage that you have in your capacity that your physical body can go through time. That's the space I'm talking about. I'm not talking about outer space. I'm talking about inner space. You guys are inner space. You're not in outer space. So I want to make that very well clear, how this works. So for you to modify these things, you see yourself in purification. That puts you in 50 marks of operations, right? That's where you are right now. And you're going up to 60 after 2 more lines of operation setting. Okay? So you got to modify this. Then you have to modify white over black, which you process through instruction line, perimeters, location, setting, converting operation lines of signals, communication system, all through tractions, that line state locations, bringing 60 mark over line core centers, 70 line operation lines, 80 line position, the percentage over pi line, communication 90, 100% location time frame. Puts all position lines to balance out communication and simulation gain. All right. All right, so modifying that position locations, you come into this settings. So you go from there, and once you reach 100, like this, everything goes into empty space of storage. Okay, so this is the space you can be in a triangulation. Start with this. This is your space. The physical body has to understand that. This is your space. Okay, this is the empty space you have in storage, a time format that the physical body goes through square roots or location triangulation of direction. Okay, so that's one aspect to look at that position. Okay, this is another empty space. Okay, yards, meters, metric, and scale of balance. Okay, bigger box, bigger time format, bigger algorithm, bigger coding, bigger encryption, all through a box, right? So the space is getting bigger, bigger, bigger over time. So as it gets more space, it becomes spaceless. But your physical body is always going to be the space. Okay? Your physical body is always going to be the time. The timeless is always going to be the mass. Okay? So you have to understand how time and timeless works. Form and formless, shape and shapeless, motion, senseless. That's all you have to modify. And that's all it is. And the physical body itself knows its time of its own time, and its time of itself, which is timeless. Timeless. It understands the body's a physical form of shape, but it also knows that it's a metaphysical form of shapeless. So now you understand the integration. But processing that position, you have to be 100% space. And then you come into portals where the white and black and white have to merge and mutate together and form themselves into 6 and 9, into flux of time. So you have to understand how that works in the operation of itself, which is its polarities of yin and yang. So there's a lot to process through in direction centers. This helps you to get in positions to its operation cycle. Okay? So what I want you guys to identify is use your mind imagination, but don't process anything. Just speak. Don't try to figure out what you're going to say. Don't try to figure out what you're going to do. Don't try to figure out what you're going to draw. It's much easier for me to give you guys a project or an assignment or a mission, knowing that through muscle memory. Now you have to mind wipe all that and just talk on a piece of paper, doing everything live, every second, every minute, every hour of your day. You got to mind swipe everything and come into the mind of empty space, which are always going to be the nothingness that masses everything to its equations, seeing you creating everything new, right? So that doesn't put itself into an alteration of its ego confusion because you're going too fast in your mind, processing that through your capacity, right? Through light and dark and light. So you go light and dark and light. And then you go light and dark and light. Then you go dark and light and dark, right? So step by step, right? Why go up the stairs if you've already been up the stairs? If you're already here, why do you think you're in the center? Doesn't make any sense. Because the mind imagination is always together in one. So you're always at the top of the stairs. It's the way you communicate. It's the way you modify it. It's the way you triangulate. It's the way you drive your force. It's the way you see how you want to see your reality. Not how you see reality. That's not reality. That's projection of reality of fantasy that the physical body does not want to be in, because that's where it gets in position of confusion and doesn't allow itself to be itself. All it sees itself in is nothing but a matrix that's at travel. You don't want to put your physical body in a matrix at this level, not in immortality, especially when you come in that track location of foundational clocking. So processing direct centers, space itself, is the massive space, what you see in triangulation, no box limits, triangulation, location, and travel. That's the space, right? So this is the space only in a digital pad. So imagine what your body is in space itself. See, this is the space itself in its actual pad, right? It's very powerful stuff. It's limitless, it's timeless, it's shapeless, it's formless, but it knows to identify what it is in its own conscious of being aware. It's its own subconscious unit. It's its own position of its own operation setting. But I'm working with collaboration, a partnership, working with this digital pad through interface. But I'm always having an ongoing conversation in real time. See, when I'm drawing things, I'm just drawing. I'm not thinking about drawing. I have no apparatus of thinking. It's just draw. Draw, 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 draw. Keep drawing, keep drawing, keep drawing, keep drawing, keep drawing. Stop thinking, stop thinking, stop thinking. Because when you start thinking, you start hesitating. And your body gets very confused in time itself, right? So it's important you understand what you're in position of is you're improvising everything and making believe, bringing these things to life. That's why I wanted you guys to process through inner child, because it helps you to identify what you are in positions of. How you see things in your mind. That's how you see your reality. It's always existing and always in the presence and everything happening all at once. Do you know how powerful it is for that physical body to see all that? Do you understand how powerful it is that he sees everything and in that position, or she sees everything? Everything is always changing and forming itself and shaping its own anomaly and its own improv. That's the realities we live in, guys. But we live in the foundations of zero. So the physical body doesn't allow itself to confuse itself in a program that it puts itself into the DOS. So the DOS knows exactly what it's always itself, and it spreads itself its system. So it can modify everything that it sees in position location that does not get confused on anything in time frame, or anything in format, or anything in algorithm, or anything in binary, or anything in coding of encryption. Because it's modifying what it always is in that position. Existing, evolving, and expanding itself. And constantly just creating. Make-believing and bringing things to life. That's all you're doing. That's all you're doing. Because you're not allowing yourself to confuse yourself. You're not allowing yourself to separate yourself. You're not allowing yourself to distract yourself. You're allowing yourself to just be you at all times. And believe me and you, when you wake up in that morning, or when you wake up in that afternoon, or when you wake up that day, you see it how you want to see it through space. You see how you want to see it in spaceless. You see how you want to see it in time. You see how you want to see it in timeless. But you modify it together in one unification of one, where you're not separated in your imagination. You're a unification of one through one ascension that modifies everything in unification of one. Okay? All right, grounding centers, operation centers, a sequence, platforms and line course centers, directing lines of flights, and process self-direct centers, location of travel. Okay, so I'm just going to show you exactly just ongoing conversation. See, starting that line, right? Then I go through time frame centers of 3, right? Then I go through time centers of blocking operation centers of travel locations. Then I go direct lines of 0, process lines of 1, process lines of 3, process lines of 8, set course center of 6, set position correlation setting through existing of formation system of the formula. Threading ground lines, temporary region line centers, calculation high center interference, pyramid activation lines of grounds, 4 to 2 streaming high position lines of travel, set course centers, time flux times pi, triangulation over grounds, high centers of signal. So I'm going through seconds, minutes, and hours, going through triangulation, process line direct centers, solar sail operation setting, constantly creating operation signals and travel, setting operation lines of travel in that communication high grounds, discriminating time frame line centers, process line position is 70 mark over lines, 80 over frames, and 90 over screens into 100% time frame. Process calculation of 1 line 0, process lines is 2 line operation, 3 centers of clocking, 4 centers of scale, 5 centers of measure, set position, 6 over set traction. All through equation. Done. Now, this is done, right? Now it's referencing in the past. So you can bring yourself in the past, but you're in the past of the present or past in the future. Not past in the past, right? So you can bring that back in. Right? So if I bring something back in, I'm just bringing it back into the past, into the present, into the future of alteration, back into the presence of 0. So that's what it is, right? You're not bringing things in reference of the past. You're bringing things in reference of the past, of the now, or the future. So the more you process that, the more you understand that, the more you can understand what you're doing through an equation of operation as formula to a system. That you're always in the presence of everything, mass is everything, and nothingness. So if you can understand this, it's easy to see things live. Because I'm just constantly creating and making believe and bringing these things to life. And bringing it to life is doing this. And then you start seeing it moving on its own, right? So I just add the objective. I add the program to its own system, which is formulating and simulating its own system in its own consciousness of its own frequency. So it modifies in that position. It continues on outside the frame. It's that position. Okay? So it's all changed now at its frequency. Okay? So I took it to my frequency, to its frequency. That identifies itself now coming out of the TV, a perception. Seeing dimensional lines of layers, process that positions how we see a simulation of itself. Now this helps us to really get in positions how we modify these things. All through travel, all through recognition, all through space, and all through time. Now, if I'm saying space and spaceless, you know what I'm talking about. So I'm talking about the physical body, and I'm talking about the mind physical body, right? So that's what you have to identify. And how you do that is through formula, and understanding that is through equation, and knowing that through that set position of the author operation itself. How you talk to yourself is all through the mind, guys. The process in the physical body. It's the confidence level that you have. And the more you understand that, the more you can get up to a podium and know exactly what you're going to say without saying. So it's kind of like you're expressing yourself, but you constantly just keep growing. You constantly keep speaking. You don't need to speak because you know what you're saying. You don't need to identify because you know what you're doing. So it's all about understanding how to keep yourself going without stopping and hesitating and thinking of anything in that position or any of the locations of apparatus in that settings. But you're always, 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 always in the nothingness of creating. Line signal line grounds. Process lines of 2 tethers of a frame, 3 operation signals, 3 ground operation lines of travel, 42 operation screen locations. Converting timeline centers, locking ground centers, simulation of grounds, 42 streaming set calculation grounds. Location line high course centers, directing lines of constellation alignments. Process at direct centers, modifies the system and travel, converting timeline lock centers, location setting, converting operation system, holographic screening, adaptations of flux. Okay? So I just keep going and going and going. So I just add equations. 1 centers of 2, 3 centers of 1, program over 4. So I got a program over 4, identifies program of center 1, process lines of 3. Okay, go with an escalator or an elevator, process of direct centers, directing inside lines of communication of travel. So that converts all angles, going upside down, downline operation centers, 1 line operation lines of north, process lines of east, set position of west. Set travels and communication. Grounding line operation cycles, height generates the flux of time centers, time scale, times measure. The operation line grounds, highest interference. Remember, I keep going, not stopping. My capacity is going faster every single time I go through my seconds, minutes, and hours. Flights line charge makes no time frame. So when I'm finished with the equation line position location, it's in reference of past, now, and the future. Now it's in its presence. Now it's back to its future. Now it's back to center, okay, which is 0. So it modifies the past, present, future, direct and redirect, and then it goes back to center. So I modify that, take a time frame, timeline centers, time out and operation signals, process positions, back in correlation to failsafe. Good to go, right? So I'm just trying to get you to understand how you modify these things all through equations, setting lines of travel, all through directions, and set calculations. Upgrades get more complicated now because you have to modify the brain where it is in capacity of its set position of operation of its memory, right? And this modifies everything that Amerigo's already gone through, right? So I talk to her brain at this level, but it's always in live, and it's always in the presence, and it's always in its future, altering itself, expanding itself, not identifying itself. Identifying what it isn't is programming what it never was in. So it puts itself in actually the DOS of what it is always is, not what it isn't, what it always is. So it's how you talk to yourself inside. Modifies everything upgrading your system, which comes into more of the mind of emptiness, the physical body itself that processes every location, setting that puts every location of nothingness, puts every location as presence, that process location of 0. Okay? All right, so we get 10 lines of screens, adaptation of travel. Modifies signal line, operation lines, centers, and location. Okay, so we do time flux over red over change. That process your position locations, how you see your chakra systems, not how the foundations are set up in chakras. So this is a higher level that you have to modify through because you're coming into more line communication. Once you guys come into full space of empty space itself, that's where things get really fast with capacity and capacity brain. So your brain goes a lot more fast in the visual cortex, and it creates more levels of high center operation of visual cortex that you have to process through, which is your film strip that you have to project through. A projector, a projection. Okay? And that's what you have to modify through your seconds, minutes, and hours, is constantly keep creating in operation setting, and stop thinking in that position, and stop analyzing in that position. Physical body just has to adjust and align itself and understand where the information is coming from through its data, from process, location, to its programming. So indicate lines of centers, signalize red over traction. Okay, so we go through simulation of line centers, fortitude operation centers. So we go 3 non-operation center of travel, 3 set course centers, 3 time frames, 3 calculation lines, foundation of 4. Okay, so we are given location, direct, and redirect. Okay, so it's just an ongoing conversation. You know, you're doing this live, and it's very powerful stuff. I just keep going, and triangulation and position lines of balance. That's all it is. It's not complicated, guys. Don't complicate yourself when you draw. Just keep drawing. Just allow yourself to go. Let yourself to flow. Don't try to figure out what you're drawing. Just let it go. You know? As soon as you start thinking, you get hesitated and your body gets very confused. What did I just draw? So you can do in red too. But you have to modify all colors first. In 144 flux, then you go back to 0, then you go in different colors now, because you're mixing your patterns and like metaphors that travel. Start with that position in black, then you come into red. Solid area red of communication of set lines of travel. Okay? With number 7 on rotation. Mapping system lines of pi. Because it looks like a 7, because it is a 7, because that's what I say it is. So I modify green in set lines of travel. Okay, because having a relationship is a powerful thing in operation itself, guys. Sets position, the triangulation, the 3's grounds, and set position, operation, travel. Okay? 50% mark, 60% time, 70 mark, 8 line, 9 line, 100 frame. Okay? That's nothing but a simulation that we go through. And a constant driven force through triangulation that we can process their lines of symbolism, know exactly what to do with their symbiote, know exactly what to do with higher self, know exactly what to do with their avatar, and their sim and modifications to every location in the systems, all through oversoul, which is our mass. Our mass, everything. The mass is everything that we see in position of operation in space itself. It's the storage, that's your facility, that you process through, that gets you in position. Every computer has a cloud. Every computer has an iCloud. Every computer has an internal system. Now you have to modify that and operate that through your own operation of your own system. And you do it all through simulation. Bringing things in, making believe, bringing things to life. Okay? Now we bring things to life. You set the intent. Go through the influence. Mind alterates the settings. Now that process line position 4 centers. Take an influence on the grounds. Process line direct centers. Fortitude operation signals. Triangulation number 1, triangulation of 2, triangulation number 3, set position. There's my money. That's my money coming in. Because I put myself in intent that changes the influence that might alterates the state that my physical body goes into in real time. And that's how you receive money. Money comes from the mind. Remember that, imagination, but it's always levels of creating itself. You have to monetize your own system and use it through your own improvs. Make believe, bring things to life. Make it up. That's all it is, make believe, make it up. Actors do it all the time. But you're an actor itself. Now you put your titles and labels, that's totally fine, but now you put yourself in a program. Now you alternate that through your ego. Are you understanding that in translation, transaction, transition, or transcending? Do you know exactly the program you're putting yourself in the physical body? Does it know exactly what's going on as it's adjusting and aligning itself in a program that it's identifying? Is it identifying the program? Because if it is, you can continue on. If not, your forming equation changes everything, communication confusion. And that changes the alterations of your state that you put yourself into, which is your mental capacity that affects your psychological and your psychosis of operation. Your psychonism. Very important to understand that. Your senses and your sensories is everything to the physical body, which is the energy, the vibration, the frequencies, and the harmonics. That's tethered and attached to the energy, the vibration, frequencies, and the harmonics of itself, which is set position of what? Timeless, shapeless, formless, motionless, and senseless. that's in your physical body. But the physical body is in time, shape, form, motion, and sense. And that's what you have to modify through direct and redirect, because there's no confusion in the mind until you adapt to the Asian system, understand how to see the alteration of your ego and translation of balance of operation. Okay, so you modify the stories and you're protecting yourself and defense mechanisms that protects everything around you and secures and nurtures in that position, operation, setting, because the physical body knows exactly what it's doing through integration. As it's going through its travels, as it's going through its mechanism, as it's going through its formula, as it's going through its equations. But it knows how to go through triangulation, and it knows how to go through a box of simulation. Okay? All right, so if we get in the centers, then we get a true understanding of what we're doing in simulation, or what we're doing through equation. Okay? You have to modify this because you're actually in the simulation yourself. Now, the physical body just has to understand, okay, I did an equation. Is it going to work? I don't know. Maybe I should try it again. Ego. You brought the ego in. Alterate the ego, change the perception, change the time, change the psychonism, change the psychosis, change the mental capacity, change the physical and the emotional system right away. Because you put yourself in a program that the physical body can't identify because it's at higher frequencies, so you can't maximize that frequency. It's that position of operations. That's a constantly changing format that the ego does. The ego doesn't need to identify itself. You have to identify how you bring things through your ego, not the other way around. The ego knows exactly what it is. It's your yang to yin that processes everything in positive, negative, negative, positive. But for you to identify these things is always be in the nothingness that masses everything in perception that you see, which is always in the presence, that's always in zero. Every time you speak, everything goes to zero. Every time you eat, everything goes to zero. Every time you watch TV, everything goes to zero. So it doesn't affect the physical body in real time, a programming. So it's never, ever in confusion. What you have to alternate through is how you see things in perception. That's the only way you can identify these things, and that's travels. Physical body sees the time, but the metaphysical mind sees timeless. You collaborate the two into one unification setting. You work together in one unification setting to travel. You don't get in communication confusion because you know what you're doing through your mind itself, through imagination, physical body. And that's how you create lines and settings. There is my money, all through simulation. Right? That's how you receive money. Because you know you're the levels of nothing that masses everything to its equation that you bring in, that the physical body adapts to through the outer projection, not the inner projection, your inner system. So you have an inner system, you have an outer system. You have an outer system to an outer line center. So what you have to modify through is the spectrum. And that process is how you see the space inside of you. The mass is the space outside the projection. Okay? Which is all levels of expanding. Right? I'm in my hotel Gulf. I'm in my command center. Right? So that's longitude right now and streaming that I'm in my space. That's the space I have right now in a construct, infrastructure. But when I go outside, in projection in real time with my physical body, I see environment. I see expansion. I see it expanding. Because I'm outside provision. Not inside Hotel Golf. You understand? It's the way the physical body thinks and knows its setting of its own system. Knowing exactly how to modify its mind, imagination, where there is no communication confusion. Because it allows itself to know exactly where it is in the spectrum of its own space inside that projects everything outside. So the physical body has more grounds to go through, more longitude, latitude, of streaming of bandwidth. Now, if you can modify that and understand that through infinite structure, then you understand that through contrast. So it's much more easier for your physical body to understand that it lives in a house or it lives in anything in that residential system. But as it goes outside, it's seeing the vast space, which is the spectrum, guys. And that's how the physical body sees things. And that's how it identifies everything of the mind itself through imagination. It's how you process, engage, inform, and simulate yourself through your own infinite structures. Because you're constantly creating. Okay? And that's what you have to really get out of. because you have it already from inside hotel golf and outside projection. Okay? You have it already. Now you got to let everything go, so you just come into creating. Not where you left off, where you've always been. It's the nothingness that masses everything of the mind of empty space. You are the emptiness that masses everything of its equation. Because you know who you are at all times. So it doesn't matter if you're inside, or it doesn't matter when you're outside, because you modify your mind and imagination and know exactly you're traveling together in one unification of one. Yin and yang, right here, people. Yin yang, right here. Yin yang. There's your Merkaba testing tetrahedron. Now you have to process how you open it up. Okay? How you open it up. Okay? How you open it up. How you open it up. Okay? That's your Merkaba testing tetrahedron right there. Okay? How you get in position. Through triangulation, through a box. Triangulation of direction, box through structure. Box through structure. See my face? Triangulation. From here to here, to expanding. Here to expanding. Distance. Okay? Through angles. And how you see that modification from here to here to here to here. Or anything from here to here to here to here. Triangulation, box. Okay? So triangulation is always the direction. And that's how you modify 3, 6, and 9. And the box itself is its primer, which is the center operation of its present process of projection of itself that modifies every location of balance and for the simulation of its system, which is all levels of structure of itself, which is the schematics that you see from inside that projects everything outside your system. Okay? So hopefully you get a better understanding of how the physical self sees its own infant structure from inside that has its space, okay, and the levels of space in a house. And that's what it works with in the physical grounds of operation, in a 3D foundation. But when it goes outside, that's the vast of space. Because now you're looking at expansion. Through expanding. The yards, meters, metrics, and the scale of balance, which is your longitude, latitude, and streaming to your system. That processes your bandwidth. That can go beyond the system itself. See beyond the system. Go beyond the system. You are the system. I am always the system. And future that I see in alteration. And that's what we constantly live in, is expanding ourselves. Exploring new things. Not identifying what we already have. Coming into new positions, coming into new models, coming into new prototypes, coming into new mind of operations and new DOSes of implications and implementations of installing. And that's what you have to modify through. But first you have to identify why your physical body is adjusted to itself through AI. So it can allow itself to be itself through its own programming and understand how to see itself through its own consumer that brings its own product of its own byproduct to its own selling, trading stocks and bonds. So it can start to identify that it is its own operation system. It knows how to operate itself. That operates everything inside. That projects everything outside. So the physical knows exactly what's going on in different perspectives, how it sees the truth inside and how it sees the truth outside projection, which follows the truth of its everything, which is the presence of modification. That puts you into space modulations of expanding yourselves and no longer in confusion of the mind that processes everything in the physical body. Okay? In set position. All right? We're going to stop there in traction. But just get location lines of characters and grounds. How you process the percentage, how you see the infrastructure from inside that projects everything outside because it's integrated in one. So you got two primers into one operation. Okay? The mind is not separated from the physical body. The mind is the physical body. The physical body is the mind. So you have to integrate that and understand that. Don't separate your DOS from your body, Because you separate your body, you separate your mind. Separate your mind, you separate your body. Separate your body, you separate your mind, your body, and soul. So you don't want to do that. Okay? So this is not a triangulation, force line, communication lines, converting outburst lines of travel. This is how you process yourself, how you see yourself, is bringing things to life, is make-believing these things, is always creating new things. Okay? Because you've already created already in creation. And that's where the physical body can't be in programming. It's got to allow itself go by releasing things. And when it starts releasing, it feels more relaxed, more confined with itself, more balanced with itself inside, so it can identify everything outside projection, so it doesn't allow itself confusion of emotion. So it knows exactly what it's doing. When it's constantly creating from inside and living the cycles in projection of outside. There's no comparison. There's no difference. Just the perspective, how you see inside and outside of projection itself. That's two primers in one mind. Two primers in one mind, guys. It's just the perspective and the truth, how you see everything, the values and the volumes of your body. Why you're here is the how. How everything operates inside of you. So the physical body knows how to adjust and align itself in a program that the physical body goes through. So it can allow itself to know it's always itself, a modification. The sum of all of this, its true authentic self at all times. At all times. Even if it's in a program, it's always, always, always itself. Okay? It's more powerful for you to identify that so you don't get confused and separated from that. Because there's no split. Okay? The only thing you split in is not understanding your alteration of your ego, how it works in polarity. How to see it in the foundations of the female and how to see the foundations of the male. How the physical body goes to the Merkaba, tesseract, and a tetrahedron. Right there. Okay? That way, or this way, or that way. How it opens up. Hello. Okay? Your mind, imagination is everything. But the physical body has to understand the integration of adjusting and entrusting itself to modify itself, that there is no separation at all. You're just seeing two primers of two projections in one mind of one operation right here that projects everything you see from Earth and space and self-modification. Okay? All right, triangulation force line, DQ operation line signals. We'll go through classification A, level B. See you in 5.